clock tells me it's 9 o'clock, so let's call this meeting to order with a moment of silence. Thank you. First order is to approve the agenda. Motion to approve. Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're not gonna have a public hearing on a speed ordinance. This involves the streets west of KBOE to the stop sign and then north on Lincoln to the next stop sign, I believe. Been a request out there to slow traffic down and so we're gonna have a public hearing on that this time.
Move to go into public hearing.
Motion made and seconded to go into public hearing. All in favor say aye. Public, anybody here to speak on the issue? Any written requests or comments, Sue? Okay. Let's have a motion to close public hearing.
I was just saying that we had gotten requests from about a year ago in relation, especially Lincoln Avenue, because of the narrowness of the street, the number of houses that are along there. It's kind of a bypass or a shortcut route for folks coming from the subdivision to the north down to 230th, and then they go over to the school and what have you. There's no sidewalks on that road, and the speed in there is fairly fast. On 230th from Highway 63 over to Lincoln Avenue, there are 3 businesses and a church and several residences there. So just the fact that you have businesses there, it should be a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Protect people from going in and out of businesses. So that was the reason that I went out and looked at it, because of the initial request. And look at all the factors, and it does be, in my opinion, deem appropriate to drop the speed limit to 2 segments road.
Close the public hearing.
Motion made and seconded to close public hearing. All in favor say aye. All right, let's have a motion to approve ordinance number 24.
Move to first reading board.
Motion made and seconded to approve ordinance number 24, Mahaska County Speed Ordinance. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
I'll go on the next agenda again too.
And then we have a resolution that goes along with this. Basically, naming those 2 streets. Does that not go now? Okay. Okay. Dave Sedovic. Thank you, David, for right now. Thank you. You got anything else? Dave?
Okay, well, first thing I had is, a couple weeks ago, did a presentation at Eggs and Issues, Linda Fox and I did on the Environmental Learning Center. I think for the most part, it was pretty well received. Next thing, we're gonna do our publication this week. We've changed a lot of our policies and procedures in the parks. They haven't been updated, most of them since 1995. And so we'll be having our public hearing at our next board meeting, which is the 7th of April. Right now, our shooting range is temporarily shut down out of Russell Wildlife. We've got some volunteer help to help clean it up and expand it from a 50-yard range to a 100-yard range. And so it's an inconvenience for shooters for the time being, but I think when everything's said and done, they're going to be really happy with the results. Been working trying to get cost share for land acquisition, and we'll work another small parcel next to one of our areas that's pretty much done. We're with the county attorney on it. also working on a wetland mitigation site in the northern part of the county. After, we've been meeting with county attorney, after our board approves it, the next meeting will be approved by the board of supervisors, because since it is a mitigation site, it's, technically still real estate, so it has to go through, it's held, the easement's held by the county, it's administered by the conservation board, but since it's real estate, it is held by the county, so it has to be approved by both our board and your board. The field, we're just doing spring activities, getting ready for food plots, we're doing a lot of burning, prairie planting, getting parks ready to go. We'll probably turn the water on in a couple weeks and cross our fingers and hope for the best. And as long as you don't have any underground water leaks, I think we're gonna be good. Today, Tommy and Jason are at a fire certification class. They've done all the online portion. They have to attend a field day, and that'll get all of our field staff up and certified for wildland firefighting. As far as programs go, our hide tanning program went extremely well, since hides weren't worth very much this year. We host a program, we had 21 people bring hides, either bring hides or we had people such as Troy donate some raccoon hides. And we had raccoon, mink, coyote, and bobcat hides that were tanned, and the program went really well, and something that we could do to show we could utilize the resource even in a time of low fur prices. A lot of kids had things they wanted to hang on the wall and stuff, so that worked out well. Had our maple syrup program last Saturday at Eveland, and had about 115 people show up at that. We postponed our night burn because of weather a couple weeks ago. We're hoping to reschedule that, and when we do, we'll, get all the notifications out in the public as fast as we can. And right now, for programs are heading into field trip season, so we're starting to get pretty busy. And I know one thing this year, we're also working with Twin Cedars and busing, so we've added another school that we're actually going to and doing something, so I find that encouraging. Any questions?
What's east of town? Have you pretty well got the wood cleaned up around that old barn?
Pretty much, we're working on that. We're working on putting a temporary parking lot in around the,
And the foundations that are there, what's your plan? You got a,
there's a plan.
okay. Okay. Well, someone commented at east of town a while back, kinda nice to get that cleaned up.
Yeah, the person that was supposed to do that agreed to do the demolition didn't really fulfill his part of bargaining. And so he opened up, he kind of like subleased out to somebody else, and my staff's supposed to finish cleaning up, and then we work with getting the foundation tore out of there. Actually, that foundation and the old garage foundation too.
And the house and all that.
Well, the house,
Is that foundation gone?
the house foundation's gone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But there's also another foundation down by the road ditch, where the barn used to sit before they moved it.
Okay.
We'll probably try to get that cleaned up and tore out. It's gonna have to be taken care of before the building's built.
Okay with me. Hey,
Thank you.
Ian,
We'll start out with a couple of the events we're working on. The export conference is at Opportunity Square. It'll take place November 4, and the Sondheim Event Center in Fairfield is where we'll be holding it. We're working on sponsorships, marketing materials, and finalizing the speakers for the event currently. Educators in the workplace, we're working with Indian Hills Army agencies to get the teachers into the industry so that they can take back the skill sets to the students. The Mahaska County Day will be June 28th. We're going to tour Giamoto, Iowa Bioprocessing Center, Cloud Valve, Interpower, and Tulsa Ridge. Labor Sheds Day, that will be happening soon. The press release will be coming out. So I'll get that out as soon as we get it from Iowa Workforce Development. The 8-year-olds are participating in that, so we'll have a regional labor shed and of course our own county labor shed as well. MTCF grants, deadline is March 31. Working on several applications for those grants. The barbecue will be July 21, 5 to 6. Just continue working on food menu and then our booth contest. One tech from New Sharon did make it to the top 5 in the ag innovation category. They're going to be pitching the dream on April 14 in Des Moines for a chance at the $5,000 grant. We've all notified by semi-annual reports are due March 31, so I'm collecting the 5 current loans that we have out right now, getting the reports in, and then I'll input them at the end of the month. Ag Day for Mahaska County is April 15th, so I'll be an ambassador at the farm again, as I was last year. Young professionals had our event last week at Arlington Court at the Faith Center. That was a good event. Our April event will be on the 30th at Caldwell Park. Along Highway 92, we're going to have a bonfire. And then, of course, the upcoming meetings you can see there listed. We have a board meeting as well this month. So. Any questions?
So I think they down at Kurt's, Digger's place again.
She didn't, Karen Adams hasn't sent out where the location is. That's where it was last year at the year time. So I'm not sure exactly what it'll be this year, but that is where it was last year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ben?
Morning. So I sent everybody a copy of a letter to add Barb back to the payroll. Just gonna get that approved today and we can move on for April 1st for our seasonal.
Make a motion.
Motion made and seconded to add Barb Van Patten back to payroll for seasonal help. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Weed notice?
So this is just, the same weed notice we've had for since I've started. It lists the state listed noxious weeds, the dates that have to be destruction, and, just, the notice that needs to be published in the newspaper, so we have to pass it as a county every year in a formal motion, so that's what it is.
Make a motion that we approve the weed notice for publication.
Motion made and seconded to approve weed notice for publication. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Carried.
We had anybody ask you about milkweed in county ditches? I had a discussion how Johnson County is the most pushing for milkweed. I didn't know if there's any.
It's in some of our mixes. I mean, it's not common milkweed, it's not, but butterfly and swamp water. It's becoming a big push now to put them on there, so.
That's good.
Okay. Next, we have Northland Securities, have Jeff Heil, Mike, just for some general information. Gentlemen have not been retained by Mahaska County, they're just down here to answer some questions about bonding. I had some questions earlier, I guess I talked to Mike at the county meetings, pull up a chair, gentlemen, why don't you sit there and I know that I don't know what the plan is further down the road for the county, but I just think we need some information to kind of prepare us which way we're going. Okay?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I am Jeff Heil, Michael Hart. I've been in public finance service for quite a few years, and really that's what we do is we just come, you know, when you've got issues before you like you have, we provide information just to be able to know where you sit as far as, you know, revenues, how it's gonna pay, how it's gonna affect taxpayers. You know, I came into this business about 15 years ago. I served 2 terms as an elected official, as an auditor, so I fully understand, you know, your side of the table, and that's why I've enjoyed working with counties particularly. I've worked with about 65 counties. Michael from Illinois, we got about 4 years ago now. Yep. And so we work with a lot of cities, but mostly we like to focus on counties. And so we're here today to answer any questions. I'm just going to let Michael sort of go over some of the potential examples that you have before you.
All right, so what we tried to put in here is just some general information. Take a look at, you know, we understand you have an election coming up in May on the sales tax. Take a look at, you know, what a financing looks like, and we're not recommendation with any of these, but just to try to draw out some scenarios so you can see the things that we think about as we go through this. So this first packet here inside the front page, I just kind of put a list of some of the key things that we think about as we're approaching the financing. And when you're talking about sales tax or bonds that are paid by a local option sales tax, there's kind of two routes you can go down. There's a revenue bond and there's a general obligation bond. The difference between those is the type of security that you give the lender or the investor in the bonds. On a revenue bond, they only have a right to the county's sales tax revenue. On a GO bond, what you're ultimately pledging to the bondholder is that if that sales tax for any reason would become insufficient to pay the bonds, that you can pay for that with any other source of revenue from the county, including an unlimited property tax levy. So what does it mean from the difference between the two? Your GO bonds, because there's more security there for the investor, it's going to be cheaper for you from an interest rate standpoint. And the other thing with the revenue bonds versus the GO bonds is when you do a revenue bond, you're going to have to provide a cushion between what you actually receive in the revenue and what the bond payment is. So what you receive in revenue is going to probably need to be about a minimum of about 120% of what your payment is. Whereas a GO bond, you can pretty much go right up to what your revenue is for your annual payment. What that means is that you can borrow less money against the same dollar amount revenue stream. So, and you'll see that in some of the scenarios here later on. A few of the other things that we think about as we're going through the process is when you're talking about borrowing this size of this amount of money, you want to look at doing a credit rating, whether or not it makes sense, either through Standard & Poor's or Moody's Investor Service. And that's a process, where you have a third party come in and evaluate the finances of the county and put a formal published rating on there. Oftentimes, that can save the county. There's a fee associated with it between $10,000 and $15,000 typically, but it'll save the county oftentimes in six figures in interest costs throughout the life of the bond. A call feature. When you issue bonds in the bond market today, they're going to require that you put a provision in there that doesn't allow you to pay off the bonds until they've been outstanding for anywhere between 6 to 10 years. So that's something to think about as you're lining the revenues up, and is that you will be restricted from paying it off early. It's kind of what's one of the differences between a bond and like a home mortgage or something, that there is that restriction there. The bank qualifications, another thing we think about. In any one calendar year, the county can issue up to $10 million of bonds and designate them as being bank qualified. What that does is it provides a special. Everything we're talking about here is tax exempt interest rates on the bond issues, but it provides another layer of incentive to community banks to buy your bonds. This bank qualification does. What it does is it actually lowers your interest rates, oftentimes by about 0.25 to 0.5%, which ends up being a lot of money when you're talking about, particularly when you get up into the $8 to $10 million range of borrowing. So, and that's on a calendar year basis. So the county, if you expect to issue $10 million or less within a calendar year, you can get that bank qualification. If you're doing more than that in a calendar year, it becomes non-bank qualified. It's something that the tax code has put in there to help encourage investors to buy bonds from smaller issuers, more rural communities. The last two that I put on here, continuing disclosure. There will be some requirements when you have the bonds outstanding that each year you'll have to provide financial data out to the market so that they know where the county sits today. This has become something that the regulatory environment has become heavily scrutinized in recent years. So we're paying a lot of attention to that. And the last thing there is debt capacity. For every entity in Iowa, every public entity, you have a debt limit of 5% of your 100% valuation. This typically isn't as big a deal for counties as it is for cities. your debt limit right now is 95 million. And so, given that you haven't used debt historically, that's probably not a huge consideration for you as the county. So, the next page here just shows the sales tax receipts, what we're working with, where you've been historically. You've historically been between 800 and as much as 880,000 annually, typically in about that, 840 or 850,000 the last few years. And so what I base the rest of these numbers on going forward is kind of an expected annual receipt of 840,000. And down below there in the green box, it shows you, based upon that, the referendum language that's in there, how much you'll have for each of the three purposes, the recreation center, county roads, and then the environmental center. So of that 840,000, 336 to the recreation center or the roads, and 168 on an annual basis to the environmental center. So this will help us judge how we size the bond issues, what kind of payment we can maintain there. So I'll just, behind here, there's 4 different scenarios, and I'll kind of go through these. If you just leave this page open, it can help take a look at these. And I like to put these as separate packets so you can kind of put them side by side as you're taking a look. The first is this, it says general obligation, local option sales tax bonds, and it's the recreation center project. There's a little green box on the top right. So this shows if you were to issue GO bonds based upon the 40% for the recreation center, what would you be able to generate? And what we're showing here is that you could issue about $4.9 million of bonds. And we put in there just an assumption for cost of issuance. So you have somewhere between 4.8 and 4.8 for the project that could go towards the project. As you look at this, you should know that I've assumed a cushion above the current market interest rates of about 0.5%. And so you might be able to do a little bit more than this if the markets were exactly the same as they are today. But we've been in an extraordinarily low interest rate time. So if you look at the second page of this, you can see here what the debt service schedule looks like. And you see there each of the payments is right at about $330,000 a year. So this brings you right up to the limit within that 336. The way that the statute reads, with local option sales tax bonds, with a GO bond, you are allowed to issue GO bonds that go up to but not beyond what you've received in sales tax over the last 12-month period. And so we'll have to get that certified from the Department of Revenue when you get to that process. But you can't go beyond that. None of your payments in any one annual year can get there. So what do you have to do to get the GO pledge, or the general obligation pledge on the bond issue? Once you've passed local option sales tax referendum, you have all the legal authority you need to issue revenue bonds, which is that this next scenario we'll go through. In order to add the GO pledge to it, that added security, what you'll do is you'll have to hold another public hearing, and you'll have to provide the public the right to petition the GO bonds to go to election. So
Could we just send it to election?
they can
Petition.
petition.
Couldn't we just have it, couldn't we just send it to an election?
If you want to do it as a straight general obligation rather than, yes. Mhm. We will use it, yes.
So if you take this one and go to the next one in the packet there with the orange square there, you can kind of see how it plays out, the difference between the GO and the revenue bond. With the GO bond, and I'm looking at the orange one here, you could issue, against that same $336,000 of revenue a year, you could issue about $4 million of bonds. Now that's down from the $4.9 million of bonds we showed on the other. And the other thing that you'll see in here is there's a reserve fund in the uses of funds. And it's very typical on a revenue bond that you provide additional security to those bondholders of a reserve that you hold throughout the life of the bonds. It's essentially the size of one annual payment on the bonds. So at that 280,000, if you flip over to the next page, you'll see that's right at about what an annual payment is. That 280,000 though reduces what you can borrow, actually what goes towards the project, down to 3,642,000 in this scenario. So you go from having 4.8 to 3.6 million essentially net for the project. And you look at this, the payment size goes from 330,000 down to 280,000, and that's because we have to provide that bondholder the 20% cushion above and beyond the 280,000. So that $50,000 gap, it's not as though you don't receive those funds. You still receive those funds and you can apply it towards the project, but as far as actually capitalizing or issuing bonds, you have to leave that cushion between the two, and the market typically requires about 120% there. If you look at the third page of that, you can see that I have the ratio laid out for you. The 336 over 280,000 is about 1.2 times coverage. Is the typical language that we use. So that I have the same kind of set of two scenarios for the environmental learning project, the environmental learning center project. And here I had to kind of assume that you'd need about $1.5 million to upfront for that project here. And so the main difference on this one is not the amount that you're borrowing, it's more the length that you have to go out in time in order to capitalize or have a net benefit, a net deposit the project fund of $1.5 million. On the GO bond, you could have it paid off in about 10, 11 years in 2027. On the revenue bond, you have to add in again that reserve fund, which does increase the size of the borrowing sum, and it takes you about 5, 6 more years in order to get it paid off because of that cushion that you have to provide of the coverage ratio. Does that make sense, kind of the difference between the two as far as
See that.
how we'd approach it? And of course, I didn't provide a third set for your county roads. If it was partially because it's that same 40% as you'll see on the recreation center, so you'd be kind of under the same limitations on that side, should you want to borrow for it, capitalize those dollars also.
So just to clarify, so on the recreation center, we'll take in 6.7 million in sales tax for that project, correct?
Right.
Under the best case scenario, which is the general obligation, we would only have 4.9 available for actual capital construction.
Yeah, it's going to be closer to 4.8.
Time to pay your insurance costs.
So we're talking about $1.9 million in financing and other fees.
If you look at page 2, most of that is interest costs.
Correct.
So page 2 there along the bottom, you can see the principal is $4,905,000. There's $1,650,000 of interest, and you see the total payments is $6,555,000. So there's a little bit of cushion between the 6.7 and the 6,555,000, but there's not.
And then for the revenue bonds, that's even worse, of course. A lot of money of taxpayer assets we're paying to banks, and 1.8 or at least 2.2 under the other scenario. It's
It's cost of money to finance.
cost of finance or wages covered when you finance.
Sure, well, it is. Otherwise, you save up the money, at some point you buy it in cash, but who knows what the inflation factor is and what it will cost saving the money as you go. Would it take $5, $6 million 10 years from now by the time you accumulate it? But it's no different than home ownership or whatever. When do you want your project
Or you cannot do a project.
or not do the project? But it is, we're here just because you have a ballot proposition out there. We're not here trying to sell, we're here really
No,
just describing what's before you.
Yeah, and at a minimum,
If it
it's-
ever came to that point, we'd be glad to help you, but today is just informational. You know, we see this, you know, whether it's a jail issue, we finance probably 80% of the new jails in Iowa in the last 15 years. And that's a tough one. Courthouses are a tough one. You know, it's like, you got costs before you. Do you know, put your little dollars and keep things going before, you know, to keep going as it is, or put in new efficient buildings? And it's no different rec center or learning center. It's what's the value to the public in today's dollar? And that's really what's before you. And the public will tell you, you know, in voting for the election, and it's good that you have an election. Particular sales tax issues, I like them because they're 50% votes, but you lay out the project before them, and you got the percentages, and the public will tell you whether to proceed or not to proceed. But it's hard, but, you know, to answer your question, you put a ballot like this, and I've personally been involved in them, and as far as this side too, is once you put a ballot proposition out there, whether it's for a learning center or whatever, if you don't build it and people voted for it and the taxpayers' dollars are going there, saying, well, we're saving it for a future date, but people see that you voted for a particular issue, and about the only way you can proceed is to finance.
Well, I appreciate the information. It's good information. I think.
When you guys pulled the, or inserted the credit rating as an A plus, single A plus, was that based off of anything, or is that just kind of middle of the road with you guys?
Typically, your size of county, roughly looking at your balances, the credit ratings go off of population growth, real estate growth, and then that's a good sector. There's geographic things that's outside the typical board of supervisors. But the things that do matter is how much fund balances you have in each of your funds, how you're looking at the tax rate and what you've done. So that segment's looked at it. So we're estimating for your county, from our experience, not knowing, we're gonna assume you're gonna be A plus, A minus category. Potentially, it would be tough probably, but it could be a double A minus. And if it did, you know, interest rates, in today's market, 5 to 8 years ago, I probably only rated 30% of our issues. The banks and everybody in the marketplace looked at a good county bond with a property tax backing, we could get as low rates. But banks have been forced with their regulators, they've got rules and regulations now that only says some of them can only buy A-rated credit paper. And so that's forced it, so in order to get the best interest rate, anything over $2 million in today's market, we're sending to credit rating unless we see something in your finances that says, hey, it's a red flag. If we want to get at least an A rating, we would cancel it and not go to public rating. So in this case, say you did $4 to $5 million on an A plus rating, it cost you to S&P $15,000, let's say, it's probably going to save you probably $130,000 to $150,000 in interest over the life of the loan. So it's almost a 10 to 1 thing.
You can see I did put in here the interest rates and how that rating impacts it. And there's two boxes here, you know, we talked about that bank qualification. The left box is the bank qualified interest rates, and the right box at the blue top is the non-bank qualified. So you can see some of the difference there. That difference becomes particularly strong once you get out past 10 years. Once you get in the 15 to 20 year range, there begins to be about a 0.5% difference. But you can see the kind of the spread or the difference as you go from up through the ratings all the way up to the AAA would be the highest category.
That's a really good chart to sit and study. But as in serial, in all in the bond world, they're all sold in serial bonds. So actually, if you have a 20-year bond, you actually have 20 separate notes. Rather than like when you go to the bank and say, hey, we got a 3% loan, you're gonna have one loan, you know, at 0.6, you know, in 2017, another one at 0.85. Each of those payments have its separate serial bond. And that's the way the bond world's trade, and they trade them so that, let's say your local bank buys part of the issue. It's just like a stock. They can trade that. So if they say they have a $200,000 in 2021 at 1.8%, let's say, that's like a stock, and the bank is needing to help their portfolio. They can trade your loan, where if it was a loan, you know, that sits in their whole portfolio, which is tough to move between banks. And so that's why you're able to get lower interest rates when you go to the bond world and go to the rating with a rating on it.
If you look at kind of the scenarios I ran here, you know, on the GO bond, on the 20 years, about 3%. And that's including a 0.5% cushion above what the actual, so you'd probably be closer to 2.5 if you were to issue today. But, you know, we're, particularly since the beginning of the year with, I'm sure as you've seen the stock market that's really struggled, and so we've seen extraordinarily low rates in the last 6 weeks. And so, you know, once you get to the point where you're actually issuing it, that cushion.
We wanted to show you very conservative numbers, so if you go to the public, you know, there's cushion here to ever change. You know, you want to be able to say, hey, here's what the election is anticipating in May, and they're very comfortable numbers.
Okay, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you for the opportunity, and wish you the best in whatever direction the public sends you in this.
See where it goes.
Okay.
Thank you. City of Fremont.
We're here today to represent our playground committee. We're looking at trying to update and modernize. We have two city parks in town, one on the north side of the highway, the other on the south side of the highway. The equipment now, nobody can really remember for sure. They're estimating around 30 years old. It meets the safety standards at present, as long as nothing is moved. If it does, then you have to bring it into compliance. They cannot get replacement parts for it. So what we're looking at trying to do, they've come up with a plan to do some work in both parks. I think the bulk of the equipment, the new equipment, would be in the north park right there along the highway. It gets used by residents and others, people that just have picnics and stuff passing through town. There would be ADA compliant components to this so that anybody could use this. You know, we don't have really any trails or anything, so the parks are what the kids go to for outdoor activities. The goal that the city has, the committee has for this is $75,000, which will not be all of the project, but will get the equipment purchased. There still will be site work. I think they're looking at a rubber type mulch to go around it. They're hoping to have this done by October of next year. We are looking for entities or anybody that can partner with us to complete this project. As of time, we've secured pledges of just over $20,000. So we're just here to see if the board partner with us on completing this project.
Okay. I guess my point of view is that this is probably a request that should come at budget time rather than after our budget years.
Okay.
Budget's been approved. Because we don't have the money budgeted, I would assume, but I don't know how the other guys feel, but that's the route I'd like to see, but
How much is the city taking for?
The city has pledged 20,000 at this point. We needed to do that. They are looking for grants. A lot of those are matching grants up to a limit. So to kind of give them some seed money for that, the city's pledged 20,000 so far.
Why did you put it on your local option sales tax?
This is something that may come around for this. The committee wants to try and do this through donations, funding, grants, and see how far they can get. Again, we're just here. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, this is what we are doing in Fremont to try and update, keep things going in our town.
Be good after you work through the grant process and your strategic funding strategy to try to, next year during our budget time, if you guys are still short, come back and
You can sure do that.
see what you need.
Perfect.
So how is it a county, just out of curiosity, we don't usually fund city projects, so how is this a county project, or what's the rationale?
This was, I guess, brought to us to bring to you, based on what was done for New Sharon, I guess, with their pool. Which I understand is to be a private project instead of in the public area. But again, it's your decision, and we make our request, you make your decision, and
So what is your local option sales tax going towards?
we have got 10% towards the new rec center out here, and 90% towards community betterment, which can be streets, infrastructure, anything that we see as improving our city.
So if you need 75,000 for the park, why would you shift 10% of your sales tax to the city of Oskaloosa?
We see that as being a part of community betterment as a whole. We have some residents in Fremont that do use the current facility. We have others that have said they would if there was more activities and more things there. But also, whether you would use it yourself, or I see it personally, I may never go there. But if I need to go to the hospital, there may be a doctor or nurse that is living here because that was there, that helped draw them to the community or help them stay, whether it be for child care or for the recreation component to it. So we see that as part of an overall community betterment.
At least to me, I have a hard time justifying funding this when you're sending part of your own sales tax to another entity. If you have need, you should have made it, at least to me, so.
All right.
all right.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Okay, we have minutes, March 7 to approve. Motion made and seconded, approve the minutes of March 2nd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We have two resolutions. One is the fiscal year 17 capital improvement plan, assigned funds and approved transfers.
One thing I saw is this is the fiscal year 17, probably. That's
seconded to approve the, resolution of capital improvement plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, and then we have the, resolution, the economic development funding resolution. We kind of approve this every year, just, I could read it, but basically what it says that, we don't have enough money to fund a full-time economic development person, so we participate with the chamber with, some money to, work through Deanne as, our ag and rural development person, and we share that with the chamber. So,
Move to approve development resolution.
motion made and seconded to approve the economic development funding resolution. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. We need to approve a liquor license for Tassel Ridge Winery.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve that for Tassel Ridge Winery. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Consider an employee assistance program.
When Jan LeBon was here, she, we'd given her some changes to make to our employee assistance program that we're looking at improving. In the, specifically in the category of compensation, the new, I emailed this out to you guys a couple weeks ago. The new section outlines that it would be $60 per hour per employee for each hour session anyhow. And as well, they're going to be training our supervisors, that's the hourly rate that their licensed social workers get for doing that. There's one change in here that I noticed, I thought that we had agreed to take out section 2.1, where it says provide up to 3 sessions per employee, and then she still had or household member. Just thought that we amend that to strike or household member. Other than that, I think it's what we had talked about. We just have to fill out the term and termination, when it would be effective, which I would maybe suggest after the first of the year. Or excuse me, after the
July.
the next first of the year. So it'll be July 1st, 2017, 2016. To June 30th.
Wouldn't household member, wouldn't they have to be on our, basically on our insurance plan? Would that be an easy way to distinguish that out or not?
We could write that in policy. We're gonna have to adopt policy to outline who's
Okay.
eligible after we know what the contract is. It could be, I just would assume that it would be for employees.
What's the process to define who's eligible? I mean, is it part-time employees, or is it the same people that are eligible under the
It'd be,
old plan?
it would be the same ones that are eligible.
So what do we need to do to make sure that that's written policy? Amend the handbook, or?
We'd have to, yeah, I'd set a, just a generic one I got from a human resource website, on Sue's desk. Until we know what specifically we want in there, we can't make the changes. I can make the changes to reflect that after we approve the,
Can I approve the contract contingent on changes to the handbook approval?
Okay.
I'll,
but do we want it to say or household member, or do we just want it to say employee?
well, that's the question, is who, because under the handbook, household members are eligible. So is that not gonna be the case, is that gonna be the case?
It does limit 3 sessions per household, period, you know, if it's the employee or a family member.
recession for eligible person.
They have to be on the plan, I would say. Some
That
people
would
just
be-
have single coverage, so you would want to
So we
define
would-
it
I
how
would
the
just leave it
plan
house,
defines
I would just
a
leave it household
participant.
member, if that's what you want, I just leave that in there. Which is,
Okay.
they're covered under the.
That's all, that's all, makes sense.
I just want it to be clear that they would have to be on the plan. You know, some people have to carry single coverage, they don't carry their dependents.
So what should the contract say?
Wouldn't that still be, that would be outlined by employer?
Participant, I would say, participant of our plan, health plan,
Participant,
Yeah, we could just say plan participant.
plan participant.
okay. And then strike the or household.
Or employee, strike the employee or.
Okay.
So I'm okay approving it contingent on, the adoption of the policy for
Second that, Mark, all right. Any other discussion now?
Can we put the date in there then?
Effective July 1st? Yeah, that's what I would, that'll give you time to get everything in place.
what about that termination date first?
So commencing July 1st, 2016, terminating June 30th, 2017.
It's a one-year contract, correct?
Yeah, that's what I would, so we can see what the
Annual.
usage is.
That's fine.
Okay,
Motion approved.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Discuss contribution to the animal shelter. I emailed Lindsay. I thought maybe she might be here. I encouraged her to talk to you too. That's what I did with it. I don't know if she's got in contact, if she's talked to you guys. Okay. Then we'll move on. Authorize FSA information release for county property. Some gentleman interested in the property wants to view FSA records. We can release them with a simple letter from the board signed by myself saying, those records are available to you for anybody interested in purchasing one. So,
So it's for everybody, it opens it up for everybody.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted approval to do that.
Yeah, make a motion, we authorize,
Okay.
Willie the, execution order for release of information on the FSA.
Support. Motion made and seconded to release FSA information. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I would assume this next one is yours, Mike.
I think, Caleb, Caleb had something.
Morning.
Caleb.
So, I'm here on behalf of, Mahaska, rural residents, better roads. In the event the May 3 vote fails in the unincorporated portion of the Mahaska County,